Hello again, I'm Corey, or Everything Fantasy, and today I'm going to do another breakdown video where I go through a remix on the channel. I had this wonderful suggestion to do the remix that I did from Limbus Company, the main menu theme, and so I'm going to be diving into how I created the remix, my approach, what I used, all of that stuff. I noticed a few other suggestions as well, and I'll get to them too, because I actually quite like doing these videos. So, when I originally, and you might have known this if you saw my playthroughs of Limbus Company, I really enjoyed the main menu theme, how kind of vibey and just groovy and cool it felt, and I immediately had the idea to do an arrangement of it that kept the spirit while just kind of adding my own kind of feel to it. My first step was to do something which I do for a lot of arrangements. I don't know why, well, I sort of do know why, but I like the idea of having this sort of slow opening that introduces a particular motif using one or two instruments, and that's what I did here. So the arrangement starts like this. You see we have the double bass, which sounds like this. Unusually, if you're someone that makes music, you might be confused as to why there's reverb on the double bass, because it's not something you'd normally expect to add reverb on a bass instrument. I really wanted to on this occasion, but in a very kind of restricted way. So, to give you some background, the reason why you typically wouldn't add reverb to a bass instrument is because it would accentuate the bass frequencies and kind of cause muddiness in the entire mix. But the way to solve that on this occasion, well, it was just by filtering out the bass a little bit. So I have a bit of a dynamic EQ going on here. All that means is that when the bass frequencies reach a particular threshold, it just kind of tames those bass frequencies a little bit. In addition, I have a filter on the reverb as well, which is here. I'm using Valhalla Vintage, one of my favorite reverbs ever. It sounds amazing. But crucially, I also have an additional EQ that's filtering out those bass frequencies to make sure that the mix isn't too muddy. Anyway, aside from the technical stuff, I have the piano that's doing the main motif that we can hear that sounds like this. I don't recall the original doing that. There's a note that happens just before the change. It happens like here. So we have a G minor chord, and then I do a sort of modulation to the reason why is because I land on an A, and I just wanted something nice to kind of, and sort of almost a bit clashy in a sense to lead up to that A, so I went with that. And I kept that throughout the entire thing. I don't recall from memory if the original actually does that, but that's just an example of just adding something that I thought like I wanted to add in the moment. There's also the choir that's happening too, and an electric piano. I kind of wanted to go for a really warm sounding choir sound, something which doesn't sound overly realistic, but instead just sounds kind of like think like you're having a really nice warm meal. Like you got a plate full of like spaghetti bolognese, and you have that first bite and it's really warm, and you feel it in the bottom of your tummy. That's the sound that I'm imagining from this choir, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I'm using an Omnisphere patch, which I wouldn't normally use for a choir, but I knew it had that nice balance between sounding slightly synthetic and not sounding too real. Now, to transition into the main section, I did my standard of a reverse cymbal. I literally got a cymbal sound, which was from the library Battery, played the cymbal sound, rendered it to audio, and then reversed it. So if I reverse it again, you'll hear. You can hear that it is just a cymbal sound, and I've just flipped it to make it sound like this. And then I actually switch bass sounds. Not something which I'd normally do, or normally even tend to suggest to do, but to me it just made a lot of sense. I wanted to have a bit more flexibility with different sounds in different parts of the piece. So we go from this sound, and then when the main section hits, instead of playing an acoustic double bass, there's a fretless bass instead. I originally had the idea of having a fretless bass play the main bass line, but I thought from that beginning section, the fretless bass didn't work as well to me. So this is what the fretless bass sounds like. There's like a synth pad that's underlaying it as well. Let's bring in some other elements too. Slow percussion. Tremolo strings. A synth swell. It's quite nice to listen to in the background, actually. I sometimes forget that I'm supposed to be actually breaking this down. Percussion. I should talk a little bit about that. So there's a few different things going on here. I'm going to go from bottom to top as how they appear and kind of how I've organized it. So towards the end, we have the finger snaps. It sounds like it's just ordinary finger snaps, but there's a little bit of processing going on here. Have some EQ, and most importantly, there's a really, really short reverb happening that gives it a bigger sense of space. If I turn it off, it sounds like this. Back on. See, not too long, not too kind of in your face, but just kind of short enough to give a sense that it is in a room. Some hi-hats as well. I think I got this from RMX Stylus. Or Stylus RMX. I always forget which order it is. Stylus RMX, that's the order. Some more kind of percussive sounds, more hi-hat sounds, filtered percussion as well. All of to kind of blend into the background. Not be too upfront either. The main upfront element is the actual drum machine, which I programmed. I'm using a new feature of Cubase 14 called the pattern event, or the pattern editor, where you can actually program different beats and things like that and kind of add your own parameters to them as well. One really interesting thing that I wanted to throw in is listen to the bass drum. So listen to this sound as I play for a bit. You see it's there? Keep listening, keep listening. The thing that I want to happen... Oh, then it happened. It took a while to happen, but basically that last bass hit, the one that just goes ahead of the... Before the beat happens, the da-da kind of thing, has a probability chance of actually playing. The probability is 56%. So we were really unlucky when I just played it back just then. We were hearing it pretty much all of the time except that last occasion where it didn't play. It's kind of a nice feature to kind of just make your drums a bit more dynamic and not so static. Having notes that have a percentage chance of playing, sometimes just don't play, keeps it random a little bit. It means that actually if I exported the track now, even though I haven't changed anything, the version that I export would actually be different from the one you hear on YouTube, just because the percentages, the probabilities would have kicked in, and sometimes the bass note would have played, sometimes it wouldn't have played. Just kind of like, I'd like to keep things dynamic and lively. One thing that I like to do a lot in terms of original music that I compose for games and film and etc, etc, and also remixes too, is I don't like to copy things too much. So for example, let's say there's a chorus 1. And this is a good example where there is like a chorus 1 sort of thing. This sort of bit, if we can call it that. Even when it happens again, I do like to do things slightly differently, and that might mean not just copying something and pasting it over, but actually playing it again from scratch. Because it allows me to do a couple of new things that I wouldn't have thought about doing. The bass is a good example of that, where the notes aren't exactly the same or played exactly the same way as when it's first heard, and it just makes the piece sound a bit more alive, which I quite like. The piano was really interesting. I used to do this thing, particularly back in the early days of Everything Fantasy, where I tried to keep things as, like, precise and accurate to the original as possible, to the point that, like, I would listen very in-depth to every single note you could possibly hear an instrument playing, and, like, go through note by note and make sure everything was perfectly in the right place. The advantage is that it sounds exactly like the original in terms of that particular part. The disadvantage is that it just takes time and kind of strips away some of the creativity. So instead of just kind of copying exactly what I can hear, because I can do that, I can listen to a piece and copy out exactly what I'm hearing. Sometimes I think it's more effective to just listen to the substance, the feel of it, and then play something in my own way to make it sound a bit more like, I guess, a bit more like me in a sense. So while some of the things that the piano's playing isn't necessarily in the original, it's kind of my own take on it, essentially. Some things are. Like this bit, for example. And then I do something where I go kind of like completely rogue, don't follow the original main menu theme anymore, and do a reference to In Hell We Live Lament. That's there. Just a little nice nod to anybody that recognizes it, and then a little reference to From a Place of Love, just because, like, I really like the piece. It's really easy. Let me just play it and then I'll explain it. It's that phrase here. More syncopated than the original, which goes do 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 do, whereas this goes do 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 do. Now, the key thing is, this isn't planned out. I generally, when I'm playing a piano part on top of something, I will just kind of have the keyboard out. You can't see it, but it's below me. I will just play something, and then occasionally I'll be playing something and they'll be like, and I'm like, oh wait, yeah, that was From a Place of Love. I might have some of these ideas in my mind, but I won't necessarily commit to doing them. I'll just press the record button, start playing and see what happens. And occasionally I play something, I'm like, oh, I have to keep that. That sounded really cool. It's just the beauty of trying things out and not judging what you do too much either, and just trying to kind of trusting the process a little bit. All the times where I've struggled to do an arrangement or struggled to do an original composition and stuff is when I stop trusting the process of it and start kind of questioning certain decisions too early on, when I actually think one of the best things you can do is just trust that you know what you're doing. Get to the end, and then when you listen to the end of the piece, you start to think to yourself, oh, I was onto something here, rather than kind of slowing down too early and thinking, oh, I don't really like the sound of it. Some of my favorite things I've worked on, particularly recently actually, for original projects, have come out of just trying something, not really knowing where it would end up, and just kind of being a bit surprised by the end of it, having trusted the entire process and just kind of got to a point where I thought, yeah, this is really nice actually. So overall, quite a straightforward arrangement. There's not too much going on. A few kind of synth elements like DX7 playing those bells. I don't think that features in the original. I just needed something else to fill out this section. I love the synth in this section. Where is it? Let's find it. Why am my eyes are going blind? I can't even see where's the synth? Where is it happening? Okay, the reason why I didn't expect it to be where it was is I just assumed that it was a synth I'd added playing, but it's actually still that bass part, the fretless bass, laid with a synth. That's the one that's doing this. Let's add other elements in one by one. A piano can come in. That synth part. I don't usually do a long fade out to end the piece like this, but it just felt like it made sense rather than having a defined cut-off ending. Especially because in the context of the game itself, this piece would have looped anyway. But it was such a nice one to work on. It didn't take very long to do, and it was very much kind of just adding stuff in the moment and feeling like, yeah, this is a remix of the main menu theme from Limbus Company, but with some additions, some ideas, some kind of modifications and everything to add it, to almost to try and make it a bit more of a standalone piece outside of Limbus Company on some level. It was a fun one to do, definitely. And it's amazing what can happen when you're actually playing a game and you think to yourself, I must arrange this. Because that's literally what happened. I think I stopped everything I was doing and just made the arrangement and started the project. But if you have any other questions related to this or anything else at all, definitely let me know in the comments. Happy to go through particular things, aspects of this. It's always difficult to know what sort of things to talk about other than the kind of overall process of it. But if there's any questions, anything, definitely let me know. And if there's any suggestions on other remixes I've done that you want me to break down, happy to go through that too. But until next time, take care and thanks for watching.